Hello, hello, everyone! Welcome to another LoFi History this lovely Tuesday afternoon here at the Northeast Georgia History Center. Hello, Marie!
Hello!
Hello, Glen! And hello to all of our viewers. If this is your first time at LoFi History, this is your chance to ask historians Glen Kyle and Marie Walker your history questions, which I see we already have one in the chat, which we will certainly get to. But first, we always like to start out with what y'all are wearing today. And Marie, I gotta start with you. I feel like I ought to share my condolences with you, Marie.
Thank you.
So yes, tell us about what you're wearing today.
Yeah, so I am wearing what you would consider mid-Victorian or 1860s widow's weed. So I am in full mourning.
Ah, now
so complete black.
Complete black. Now, I see you've got this lovely veil over your face.
Yes, this is my weeping veil.
Oh, a weeping veil.
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
So I can go out in public and cry and no one can see me.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Now, I've understood that when you're wearing mourning clothing, you wear it for a certain amount of time, right?
Oh, there's some rules and regulations about who died, how close you were to them, in relation to that person, and also differs greatly for men and women and what you're supposed to wear. Also, people didn't always follow all of the rules. You follow the rules to the best of your social economic ability because mourning clothes are expensive.
Oh.
And also, basically the people who sold mourning clothes, because they were considered some of the first off-the-rack items. You don't want to just have, dead people clothes on hand or like
someone's got to die. I just bought this outfit.
Right.
Yes. So they became some of the first off the rack clothing that you could buy were mourning clothes.
Wow.
And of course the makers of these clothes were like, it's bad luck if you keep them. You need to not keep on to them after you're done wearing them. I think as a ploy to get people to buy more
Sounds
mourning
like a
clothes.
scam to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Here I am dressed in full widow. Usually, this is one of the things that kind of gets me about some historical movies and such. Someone dies, and then all of the women are wearing weeping veils.
Yes.
Where usually that should have really only been the widow.
Okay.
Usually it's just the widow who wears a weeping veil.
Would a mother wear one as well?
Not usually. Oh. Not that I've seen in my research, but of course... I think people would just do what they wanted to do.
Sure, yes. Things were not that
they were not that constrictive. Oh,
yes,
oh no!
Well, if you would like to keep your weeping veil, you're welcome to continue to wear your weeping veil, but we'd also love to see your face as well. So either way.
So this is what you would do when you're in half mourning. So I was just in full mourning, right? So now we're going to go to half mourning.
She's feeling better.
Yeah. So after a year and a day, because you don't want to change anything on the anniversary of the person's death, you would then go into half mourning, or secondary mourning, and half mourning. And then you would kind of still wear the veil, but you would just kind of wear it off the face. So if you wanted to pull it down, you could, but most of the time you would just kind of wear it off the
just
face,
in case you need a good cry.
Exactly. I think we should bring these back, but for 2020, 2021. But you would then wear it off the face. You could then begin to add a white collar back. You didn't have to wear completely all black. And then
sometimes it would completely fall off.
It just falls off sometimes.
She's feeling way better.
Way better. And then you go into basically third mourning, which the other one lasts for about 6 months, and then that one lasts for another 3 months.
Wow.
And then you can start to add gray and purple and still darker colors.
Okay.
And that varied according to class too.
Oh yeah,
didn't it?
definitely. Because who has all of those colored dresses to put out? That's the insanely wealthy people.
Okay.
Yeah, and quite frankly, the more poor, the more rural folks, the lifestyle requires that they get married again pretty quick.
Okay.
Because you need that entire family unit, man, woman, child, caregiver, things like that, to keep the farm or whatever going. So they were, their mourning, they did not have the luxury of
the whole years.
Paraphernalia.
But of course, men were only expected to mourn their, wife for a very, very long 3 weeks.
3
or
weeks.
3 months.
So the woman has to mourn her husband
For like a year and a half.
For a year and a half, but
Ish.
guys, it's just 3 weeks and
Well,
find
Actually, I
yourself
think
a
it's
new
3
wife.
months.
Is it
3
3
months?
months?
Okay,
3 months.
3 months, but
3
still,
months.
That's
still.
fair.
And they just have to wear like their normal black suit, but they might have like a black armband on, like
Right.
some black crepe sash around their top hat. And also, it's socially acceptable for them to remarry within those 3 months.
Wow.
As long as they're still sad.
As long as they're still sad, because the new wife also has to wear black for the first wife.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. Wow.
You have to complete the mourning with the husband for the first wife
Aw.
if you get married
How
within
sweet.
the time period.
Couples activities.
How
Yes, like
romantic. Yes.
Mourn together.
Well, that is fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, Glenn, tell us. You don't seem to be in mourning. You're actually quite colorful.
Yeah, it's hard to follow that. I'm just regular 18th century working guy. I think that, when a man such as myself reaches a certain age, I think most men who are approaching middle age just find that the 18th century clothing style is their default.
Is it default?
Am I right, guys? If you're just like, I'm in my 40s, I don't really feel like putting anything on special, I'll just put on some 18th century clothes from the closet.
Yeah,
That's what I did today.
That might be typical in your circles, Glenn, but oh, it looks like we've got some regulars back. Hello, Clavion on Twitch. Hey, hello, Phil from Massachusetts. Hey, Phil.
Hello.
And we've got Renee Popple, which I bet that also means Josh is with
Joshua,
us.
yes.
Joshua is with us today. And Stacy. Stacy actually has our first question today. And before we get to our first question, I did want to remind folks that we have our April donation goal. And thanks to our virtual family day this past Sunday, we actually got to $200. We're gonna go for $300 for the month of April. Y'all continue to be so generous.
We've got the best. Have you
We
noticed
really
that?
do. We really
We
do.
have the best followers.
We definitely do. So if you would like to show your appreciation that way, the link is going to be in the chat right about now.
Ding!
Ding! So I'll put that in the chat for everyone. But our first question comes from Stacy today, and Stacy asks, "How do you think Prince Philip will be viewed by history?" Now, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge about Prince Philip, so maybe
But
offer some context.
I would actually take that, use that to our advantage. So you don't have that much context about Prince Philip, right? So from a non-contextualized person's view on Prince Philip, what do you think? What's your initial reaction?
Prince Philip? I mean, all I know is royalty.
Yeah, but
And
does
now
that mean you kind of don't care? And that's okay.
I mean, and not that I don't care. I'm interested to learn
Sure.
more about the royal family. I just really haven't been given an opportunity to learn more about him. But I really don't know. It's sort of drawing a blank.
Yeah, he's from Greek royalty.
Greek
royals
royalty.
tend to have to marry royals. And Marie, help me. I want to say she actually did not marry him until after she knew she was going to be the sovereign. Isn't that, or did they marry before that was a sure thing?
No, so
I'm sorry, yes.
Yes. They got married. They knew that she would be queen. It was
Right.
after the abdication crisis.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So she knew she would be queen
Mm-hmm.
when they got married. Didn't know when, of course.
Yes.
But like his wife, Queen Elizabeth, this is always one of my defaults, right? He was a World War II vet.
Oh.
And just because he was royalty doesn't mean that he was in a staff room somewhere safe in London. He was in the Royal Navy,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a British royal officer of Greek descent.
They didn't get married until after World War II.
Right. They were courting officially.
Yes.
Officially
They had
courting.
met each other far, far, far before that.
Yes. But I mean, and he's a World War II vet, and he's on the naval front lines, right? He's at the invasion of Crete. He is at a lot of actions in the Mediterranean. He is at the combined fleets of the American and British fleets at Okinawa. So he's a World War II vet, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been there. He's actually served his time. And so I think for no other reason, he deserves our respect for that, right? World War II vet, just there and done. Now, he did marry into the most public and royal family in the world,
right?
Let's say. And I think it took a special affection, let's say, for Elizabeth to go into that situation knowing that people would probably snigger about him a little bit. Because here is the man of the family who's not the king.
Oh, okay.
There was some controversy about that and how would he rank and...
Because that had never happened before.
Oh, right. So, okay. So it's
yes,
first?
Because Queen Victoria.
That's right, Queen Victoria.
Oh, right.
Who is who was the longest reigning monarch, with Prince Albert being the longest he wasn't the longest consort because he died.
No, because he died early, and she reigned.
She reigned.
She didn't have to put up with a consort for most of her
Yeah,
reign.
she did not have one.
But Prince Philip has been around for more than 50 years as consort.
Now, does consort
65?
just mean the
They're
husband
married.
to the
They're married.
queen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So of course he couldn't be given the title king,
Right.
because that would, in the language of royalty, would make him the sovereign, the person in charge. And if the queen is sovereign, he must have some other title, hence Prince Consort. And his children would be, king, and he worked with that. But how will he be viewed from history, though? That's a tough one to say. I think he will be viewed with respect. He will be viewed with as much respect as the royals get nowadays. I think he didn't have any major scandals. He was pretty supportive of the royal family and its mission to maintain good relations with the British people. World War II vet.
Very supportive of Queen Elizabeth. The press, especially back in the 1950s and 1940s, when you kind of have that more man of the family, wear the pants idea and mentality in the Western world, they would try to kind of like goad him into like saying something controversial about like the queen and not being like the macho guy. And he was always he always walked a good line of saying like, no, like I'm here to support here. I pledge myself to supporting the queen. At the coronation, he pledged to serve her for her entire reign, and which he has done in the view of most incredibly well. And she said of him, he's been my life, like my steadfast rock, throughout all of these years. They've been married 73 years.
Wow.
And that's something to be
Yeah,
accomplished.
Yeah.
Right.
That's an accomplishment within itself. And through the many, Queen Elizabeth and her husband never had a scandal, which you can't say for, well, any of their children, except for maybe the youngest.
Right.
Well, give it time.
Yes. So
Give it another 70 years and let's see how
Yeah,
that
right.
goes.
we'll see how it goes. We'll see. But I think that they have been steadfast constants, not just in the British Commonwealth, but around the world. So it's kind of like a comforting presence that has now kind of just been lost. Kind of like I think he's been kind of described as the grandfather of the nation.
Yeah.
So everyone.
And I honestly worry about Her Majesty because they leaned on each other so much, and with him gone,
Yeah.
I dread the day. I dread the day.
Well, and we will be celebrating Her Majesty's birthday soon, won't we? That's actually going to be a live stream coming up on one of these Wednesdays in April. Is it next week? I think it might be our next week's.
It's April 21st, or the week of that one.
Yes.
Yes.
The week of April 21st.
So we'll learn even more about the Queen herself. But thank you for your question, Stacey.
That's a good question, yeah.
We've also got Olivia in the chat. Hey, Olivia. We got Terry. Hey, Terry.
Hi.
And our next question is going to come from Laura. Laura on YouTube asks, how was the idea of manifest destiny affected the U.S. policy over the decades? Do we still follow this today? So, yeah, maybe start with what exactly is manifest destiny for folks who aren't or need a refresher.
Oh goodness.
And
America will expand from sea to shining sea.
Yeah.
That's the very, very one-line summary.
In a nutshell, that's it, right? When the first Europeans land on the eastern coast of the North American continent, they are doing everything they can just to get a toehold and get, a village up and running and surviving. But as they begin to develop their societies and begin to develop their land, and their culture starts to grow on into the British colonial era and then into early American independence, the Americans start to see themselves as very unique. This is called American exceptionalism, right? In many ways, they are, not necessarily for the reasons they thought, sometimes for the reasons they did think, but they start to think that perhaps is this new world, this new idea of representative Republican government, of freedom for the individual and land so that everyone could be independent. Now, not necessarily wealthy, but independent, have their own domain and things like that. Well, you need land for that. And so they began to think maybe this culture, our culture, can continue across the entire North American continent. It is our destiny, right? It's manifest. It was written. Manifest destiny basically means they believe it was written into the original code of what it is to be an American. Now, when we say American, of course, we mean those of European descent, mostly, the politically enfranchised white males, but white women went into this too. Of course, they're part of that culture.
Yeah.
The enslaved necessarily didn't have a say in this, but they were being carried along by it because moving westward meant that they were accessing new lands in the South, especially for cash crops like cotton and the growth of the plantation culture. So the enslaved sort of had to go along with that. They were integral into the idea of manifest destiny, but they were not.
They didn't play an active role.
Yeah, they did not have agency within the idea of manifest destiny, but they were there. They were part of it. And so this idea creates a very expansionist policy in relation to Native Americans, right? We have the Indian Removal Acts. Louisiana Purchase greatly expanded the idea of manifest destiny because in a single $15 million purchase, we doubled the size of the United States with a stroke of a pen. Then we get Texas after the Texas independence movement, and then it becomes part of the U.S. 10 years later. Then we go to war with Mexico. We fight a war with Mexico into the Treaty of Hidalgo, Guadalupe. The United States gets all this land, California included, and parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and things like that. 1848, manifest destiny achieved, realized, right? America has the entire, from sea to shining sea, North American continent under its control, and now it's time to spread those American ideals everywhere.
So not necessarily conquer new lands, but to spread the American view of democracy.
Yeah, well, you have to get the lands to do that, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because, one of the benefits that Jefferson saw of the Louisiana Purchase was that they looked at Europe. One of the reasons that people came to the New World in the first place is because there were an abundance of people and no land available for them, which had led to, as Jefferson and some of the founding fathers saw it, the degradation of Western society, the evils of European, people could not be independent, they could not be free. The New World fixes that because everyone can have a 60 or 100 acre farm. And as he said, the Louisiana Purchase would provide for the 100th and the 1000th generation of Americans to have the ability to sort of spread out. Well, he definitely underestimated that.
Yeah.
So land is at the core of it. I would argue even more than cultural or racial aspects of it. Those are there, no question. But it's always about getting the land to continue that idea and pushing the frontier towards the Pacific Ocean.
And then some people ask, well, now that America, had made it to see the shining sea, then what does America do? Because that's kind of been like the driving factor in literally everything.
Yeah.
Even the American Revolution, after the 7 Years' War, or as we know it, the French and Indian War. Basically, America, they were like, hey, American colonists, don't go past the Rocky Mountains. Not Rocky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains. Because, like, we just fought a whole war when we're trying to figure out territories. And now the Native Americans are going to live on that side of the mountains, and you're going to live on this side of the mountains. And a bunch of colonists were like, we just fought a war because we wanted more land. And now you're telling us we can't have more land? I don't want to do that.
July 4th, 1776.
I want more land.
Yeah.
And like, that's kind of, that was one of the, as well as like the no taxation without representation, American ideas like democracy. That was also one of the factors in there is expanding, of wanting more land, of the freedom to just go across the mountains, which has then continued and continued and continued. And then America was like, well, we made it to the side of the sea. Now what do we do?
We
Space.
go to the moon. Yeah.
Well,
The final frontier.
first we get a civil war.
Yes. Well,
That put things on pause
First
for
we
a
get a
moment.
civil war. And, you know, it's interesting, when we get to that point, there's a historian writing in the very late 19th century by the name of Frederick Jackson Turner, right? And he creates this frontier thesis. And what he's doing is he's asking he's not really coming to conclusions, he's asking questions. He basically says, since 1607, the idea of what America is has been a frontier that we move towards, that we push west. It defines who we are. It defines our entire culture. Rugged individualism, can-do attitude, expansion of markets, exploration, what it is to be an American. Well, when Manifest Destiny is achieved and it's sea to shining sea, the frontier is gone.
Right.
So Frederick Jackson Turner asked, what does this mean at this point, for America going forward? If the frontier has defined who we are so strongly and now there is no frontier, what happens to us? And, you know, then we get into the 20th century and that's a whole other set of questions.
Yeah. but certainly that idea, you know, is ingrained in the American personality, you know, so
it
to speak,
is.
and
For
culture.
good
so,
and for ill.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So excellent question, Laura. Thank you so much for joining us today.
More than she wanted to know, I bet.
Yeah. And Tootsie is going to ask our next question. This is a really interesting one. So if y'all could talk about what exactly is the difference between indentured servitude, slavery, and sharecropping. Those are sort of the three big categories of, like, I guess, you know, going from someone who is enslaved and has no rights or agency to someone who's an indentured servant who has some agency but still probably isn't treated in the most ethical terms or equitable terms. And then with sharecropping, could y'all talk about the differences between those?
Oh, yes. It's very complicated.
It is.
But simple.
And yet simple.
And yet simple.
It's like, how much detail do you want us to go
Yes.
into?
I'll
So,
put it into a live stream idea program.
I mean, yeah, there's a live stream idea program.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can do this in 2 minutes. Time me.
All right.
Ready?
Wait,
All
I'm
right,
on
I'm
it.
going.
Go.
So when the New World began, we needed labor, and the best way to get the labor was for those colonizing the New World to get indentured servants. An indentured servant was generally a white European male, or usually sometimes a female, usually male. They would sign a contract. In the contract, it says that I will agree to pay your way across the ocean. I'll pay for your transportation. I will set you up with some tools. When you get there, I will feed you, I will clothe you, I will house you. But for 10, 15, 20 years, you will work for me. But at the end of your 10 or 15 or 20 years, whatever the contract says, you get 50 acres of land and you get your independence. You're a free person. So a lot of people took this. But as time went by, it became harder and harder to get indentured servants. They would run away. Transportation across the Atlantic became more affordable. And so there was a shortage of labor. So the best way to replace that labor was to use enslaved peoples. And so you could bring enslaved peoples here. Their contract did not end. The cash outlay up front was in perpetuity. And and this is just the way it is, one of the reasons that African-based slavery became so popular in the New World is because the color of their skin denoted them as a slave. Indentured servants, right? They're white. They could skip out on their indenture, run to Charleston, mix in with the local population. You can't get them back. If an African person does that, you're going to be able to track them down. You're going to see them. You're going to know.
Wow.
So Europeans even tried to enslave Indians. That didn't work. So slaves come in. They're slaves for life, right? And it becomes worse and worse on the slave as time goes by. So complicated. The Civil War ends. The 13th Amendment frees the slaves, but there are efforts. The landowners still need labor. They can't employ slavery because it's illegal. So they say, I tell you what, as a landowner, I will let you farm my land. Say it's 100 acres. I will let you farm 80 of those acres. And in exchange for you using my land and me loaning you the seed to plant, you run the season, you have the crops. When you bring the crops in, I'll take 50% of the cash from the crop. So we're sharing the crop, right?
Okay.
Well, the problem is the people working the land get in debt. If there's a bad harvest, they're in debt to the landowner, and it just becomes this vicious circle where they can't get out of the situation legally. And so white people were also sharecroppers, right? This is post-Civil War. There were white and black sharecroppers because the incredibly poor didn't have any land. They had to find a way to make a living. Sharecropping was usually it. How close was I?
That was 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
40?
So, yeah.
Oh.
But still, an excellent
really
explanation. No,
Yeah.
that cleared up a lot, yeah.
The only thing I would add to that is when we think of slavery, it's a very broad term, and there's a lot of different types of slavery.
Yes.
The slavery that is employed and used in America is called chattel slavery, which is it's a specific type of slavery. Because sometimes people will compare different cultures and different types of slavery when they're not the same. Because chattel slavery is the idea that is indeed race-based. It really created the ideas of race that we are still struggling with to this day in this country. And it's as Glenn said, it's in perpetuity. There are other forms of slavery in which that one person would be enslaved. They could still marry a person who was not enslaved and have children that were not enslaved. Chattel slavery is your children will be slaves, and their children will be slaves, and their children, and their children, and their children. And that there's really no way out.
Yeah, it's slavery. Thank you for bringing that up. The term slavery is so complicated and has so much baggage with it. You could there are entire, not graduate courses, graduate degrees. Just about what is slavery through history, right?
Because I think
we only got an hour.
It really is. Because that's something that in my colonial America class I had never heard the term chattel slavery. It had always just been slavery, and it's a very broad term. And to bring home the idea of chattel slavery, I think it makes it very clear the type of slavery that this is compared to different types.
Right. And when I teach my classes, we start at American prehistory and go up through Reconstruction, and I make a point as we go through time to help people understand that even chattel slavery in the Americas, slavery in 1770 is very different than slavery in 1850. Right? The culture, the expectations, the level of racism and things like that they shift in that time period, and the way white Americans and the enslaved see slavery in 1770 is way different than they see it in 1850. It gets worse. I mean, to put it into a nutshell, it gets way worse.
When it begins, I believe there's a historian, because I was reading an article about this, because that's also a very intriguing, fascinating, complicated topic, is America's view of themselves during the practice of enslavement. And it goes from being pretty much as what is being described as a necessary evil.
Right. We hate this.
We hate that we're doing this. We are terrible people, but we don't see another option, to being a moral good. And it's a very strange, in that almost not even 100-year period of going from necessary evil to being like, no, this is a good thing.
Greater good.
And convincing themselves that they're doing this terrible act of enslaving other humans is actually a good thing. And the psychological hoops that you jump through in doing that it's it's a lot.
Well, it must be.
Yeah.
I mean, to have to convince.
It's horrific to
convince
say,
yourself
but
of
it's kind of fascinating from a
Yeah.
historical
that. It
perspective.
would be interesting to see the
Yeah.
evolution of how it's justified. Yeah, or attempt to be justified. We do have a follow-up question from Stacy. Were there non-African slaves in the United States?
Very early on, there were enslaved Native Americans.
Okay.
Very early on, but that tended to go away. That fit very well. Native American culture in warfare, generally speaking, was that if an Iroquois was killed in war, then the Iroquois would raid the Delaware for people and capture them and bring them back against their will and force them to be a part of the Iroquois tribe. Now, when they were assimilated, they were free people, right? They were not enslaved. They were considered part of the tribe, and it was sort of a replacement sort of practice. Now, that practice was exploited because they got really good at capturing others, and they needed money, they needed guns, they needed to trade with Europeans. So instead of keeping the ones they captured, they would trade them to the Europeans, and then they would be enslaved.
But that's not a form of chattel slavery.
Correct.
So it's different.
Yeah.
Because there was never chattel slavery of non-African peoples in America, to my knowledge.
Well, I mean, they put them on the same plantations. But the thing is, the numbers were never nearly what it was for African slaves.
Yeah.
And they stopped the practice very early on because, again, you're trying to enslave someone who is incredibly familiar with the territory in which they are enslaved. They can just skedaddle into the woods and survive for a year with nothing but a stick, right? Whereas the people who have been brought from Africa are in an entirely new continent, an entirely new environment. They don't know the animals, they don't know the plants, they don't know the lay of the land. It's very difficult for them to escape, whereas the Native Americans can skedaddle.
Yeah.
So people very, very quickly turn from enslavement of Native Americans to focusing exclusively on African slaves.
Yeah. Fascinating topic. I definitely think that would, I mean, there's so many specific facets of it that you could really dive into.
Right.
So definitely want to keep that in mind for future live stream programs. Thank you, Tootsie. That was an excellent topic. And our next question is going to come from one of our biggest fans, Olivia, on Twitch.
I'm almost nervous.
Yeah, right.
Based on that last question she gave us.
Olivia asks, if you could go back in time and figure out one thing that has been lost to history or find something that was lost, what would you do? Olivia says, I would go back to Roanoke and figure out what actually happened. That would be, I would want to stay at a distance, I think.
I don't think I want to go to Roanoke.
Yeah, right. But
aliens.
Excellent. Oh, and
according to the history channels.
Clavion says, I would go back to the location whose name I forgot, but the one where the Wolfman Zap animatronic was being hosted and record show tapes to become the hero of those who wonder what happened to him nowadays. Now, the Wolfman Zap animatronic. I don't know if I'm familiar with that, Clavion. That sounds like a very fun niche piece of history. Throw a link in the chat if you've got some information on that. But back to Olivia's question. So yeah, something that was...
What would we find?
That was lost to history. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, and we've talked about this before, is the Library of Alexandria.
Right. That's probably bigger than she's talking about.
Yeah, right.
We can't just pick that up and put it in our pocket.
Maybe if we could finally be like Indiana Jones and find the Ark of the Covenant.
I was literally just
yeah,
right.
The Ark of the Lost Covenant, the Holy Grail.
Yes, right. But yeah, is there anything specific that, and I guess I'm also wondering, like, are there things that we know did exist, but we know that they no longer exist, like some of the great wonders of the world?
Yeah, well, that's, I'm just going to pull an example out of the air here. Greek tragedy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Greek tragedies were written in trilogies, usually, and we know that they had hundreds of trilogy Greek tragedies. Guess how many complete trilogies of Greek tragedy that still exist?
Only one.
There's only
complete
one
trilogy?
complete trilogy.
And which one is it?
Now we have, this play from this trilogy and this play from that trilogy and things like that. But to my knowledge, we only have one, and it's I can't remember. It's by Aeschylus.
Aeschylus.
I can't remember. There's a name for it.
Describe what it's about.
It's Greek people fighting the gods and getting bad things happen. I know they're all that way.
Is it Oedipus?
Oedipus Rex.
Because there's two of them at least. Because I read at least two of them.
Maybe that is the cycle.
I know there's two of them.
We've got a couple that we have two of the plays from the trilogy, but not the full trilogy.
Oh yeah, so Aeschylus, Agamemnon, I think. Let's see. Only 7 of an estimated 70 to 90 tragedies written by Aeschylus have survived. But you're talking about like that full trilogy.
The trilogy.
So, yeah, I'll try to find that.
Yeah.
But that would be really cool. The Orestian trilogy? That's what
yes.
Orestian. I don't know what that's about though. I'll have to look that up.
Okay, here's what I would do. Olivia, you ready? There is, since we're on Greeks, this is what made me think of it. At the Battle of Marathon, where the Persians came ashore and the Athenians they didn't drive them back into the sea, but they defeated them, right? A massive, overwhelming victory that the Athenians thought they did not have a chance of. Back in the late 1800s, I think, there was a mound there that the archaeologists got into, and they found a bronze helmet. And on the bronze helmet, like a hoplite's helmet, and it basically has the name Miltiades on it. Miltiades was the general of the Athenians at the Battle of Marathon.
Ooh.
There has been great speculation of if this is a post-war fake or what it is. So it's not necessarily finding something. Let's say that I'm going to go back in time and see if that really is the helmet of Miltiades.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. I love it.
That would, because they also found a skull in it.
Ooh.
But he survived the battle, so how could it be?
Oh, right.
So it's a mystery, right? That's the mystery I would like to solve.
Oh, that's cool.
To know if that was an actual helmet from the Battle of Marathon, if it actually belonged to Miltiades, and how a skull ended up in the thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Marie, do you have something in mind? Something that is lost to history, or perhaps a bit of a history mystery you'd like to solve?
Yes.
And Olivia did qualify. She said that you could be a spectator, so you could live if you went somewhere dangerous.
Okay.
This time machine is well thought out.
Okay, good.
Don't worry.
Antibiotics and everything.
Yes. Yeah, right.
You got all your vaccines
Yes.
to travel to the past. Oh, I forgot her name all of a sudden. But it's the Celtic warrior queen who people are not sure existed.
Boudica.
Yes, Boudica.
Boudica.
I want to go see
Boudica. I
if
haven't heard of that.
Boudica existed or not. Truly. I'm pretty sure she did.
I bet she, but the question is, was she like at the front of her army in a chariot with her hair limed up, screaming
looking
at the
like
Romans
brave,
to kill them?
yeah.
I
I can't do blood and violence, but I want to just watch her army like travel somewhere, and then I'll just like
keep an eye on it. Yeah.
For that when she, is in battle. But
Right.
I want to go see Boudica at least lead the army into battle, and then I'll just bring the entire battle.
Good luck.
Like, good luck.
Oh,
You're
that
gonna
sounds
do
fascinating.
great.
Yeah, don't worry.
Stop the
we also
Romans from
have-
invading your home.
Don't worry about us. We've also got Bobble back on Twitch. Hey, Bobble, welcome back. And wait, not Fried. Freed. Freed. And we also have Calicott. Hey, Calicott on Twitch. Good to see you again. So Clavion was clarifying that they love animatronic restaurants so much, and Wolfman Zap is a very unknown, that's similar to Chuck E. Cheese from the 80s, and there's basically nothing known about him, but that's a really funny, niche interest to have, animatronics, but at the same time, it also makes me think of, Jim Henson's puppets and everything.
Oh,
and
yeah.
all of the cool puppets and animatronics of that era as well. That would be a really fun topic. Calicott, you have an excellent question. Calicott says, could you DJ with phonographs way back in the day? That is hilarious. I would love to attempt to scratch some records on a gramophone or phonograph or Edaphone. Or there's also all sorts of phones. Maybe scratch some cylinders.
That's right.
The Edison cylinders. But I honestly have no idea. But thank you. That's an excellent idea.
I guess physically, I guess you could.
I think you could. I wonder if there was just like a really early DJ who was just like, wait a second, this is cool. Excellent question. Good, Tootsie, goodbye. I feel like Beethoven or something. Do-do-do-do. I love it. Oh, Laura, thank you so much. Laura said that they finally became a digital member. I really enjoy your programs. Thank you so much. In fact, thank you for the reminder. I'll go ahead and throw in the chat. If anyone else is interested in becoming a digital member, it's quite affordable, only $3 a month or $35 a year, and you get to enjoy all of our members' live streams every Friday. And in fact, while we're talking about it, this Friday, Marie's going to be hosting a really cool live stream about rationing during World War II. So you're going to be making some actual recipes that were based on, how can we make this go a little bit further. So if you would like to become a member, you can definitely become a member in time for that stream and every other one on Friday, as well as all of our, I think it's got to be over 50 now of members live streams that we've had since last year.
And tonight we're having a members only event, the forum, at 7 p.m. Eastern. Well, that if you're a member and you haven't received your notice on that, you need to jump on it and make sure you tune in at 7.
Yes.
And only a few short hours.
Yes, that's right. So you're going to be talking about log cabins in North Georgia.
Log cabins in North Georgia. Not just like the sites and the ones that are left, but placing them within the social and cultural context of the greater North Georgia area.
Very cool. So that's tonight. And of course, all of our members out there, you can check out the members Facebook page, and there will be an email invite for that. Let's see. The Rockafire Explosion is the name of the animatronic band at Chuck E. Cheese.
Yes.
There's a great documentary about the guy who created them. Oh, that's so cool.
I saw those, yes.
That's really neat.
I think I watched part of that.
And Wheelless Studios is here with us, another Twitch return regular. Hello, good to see you. And I think we're caught up with questions so far. So if y'all want to throw in any more questions, we do have about 15 minutes or so left, but I have a log of fun questions to ask you guys. So let's see. One of them is, let's see. Oh yeah, I was curious about this. Okay, so we have all these country dances and folk dances and everything, but were there specific people who were like, all right, I'm gonna create the newest, greatest dance? Or did they just sort of evolve over time? I mean, who actually choreographed folk dances?
I would say that's very much evolved over time. There's no one to say this person invented the waltz, or this person invented, because the waltz comes out of a traditional European folk dance. There's no one that really created the real, it comes out of the larger social context. Even when we come up to more modern dances, there's a few people who we can say, oh, well, this person popularized the Charleston, but did they come up with it?
Right.
The only person that I can really think of is when we can say, this person created this dance is Martha Graham, who basically pioneered modern dance.
Martha Graham. Okay. I've never heard of her.
Oh, yeah.
When you say modern dance, what does modern exactly mean? What time frame?
Modern dance is a genre of dance which is very flowing, and it's not as rigid, or it's its own type of style.
I think I know what you mean, contemporary. It's also called contemporary dance.
Yes.
It's very emotionally driven, I've noticed.
Yes.
I think I know what you're talking about now. Well, that's really cool.
Yes. So she very much is the mother mother of modern dance, of contemporary dance, and it borrows, I think, from all dances and styles, but it's also definitely its own thing. But that's the only person that I can really think of as like, this person did this. Of course, there are, famous ballet teachers, and there's famous tap dancers, and there's famous types of dancers who added so much to the craft. I was just thinking of the brothers in tap dance, right?
Oh, I know who you're talking about, but I also cannot think of them. Famous tap dancing brothers. What are they? Oh, yes, the Nicholas brothers.
Brothers, yes. I could only think of the Wright brothers. I'm like, that's that is not dance. But the Nicholas brothers, who did some amazing tap dance routines, and added so much to the vocabulary of tap dance.
Yeah,
they were fantastic. Just go Google them. They're amazing to watch. So there are definitely those famous people, but it's not like they invented tap dance.
Right.
I mean, from all of their amazing things, they might as well have, I bet.
So it's
but
likely
not like to pinpoint it. So a lot of I think dances come out of a general tradition that you can't. You can like kind of narrow it down to a culture or a region. So there's French ballet, there's Russian ballet, but which came out of different types of court dance. You could kind of say that Louis XIV kind of helped invent ballet, but there's so much, and every layer that gets added to it it evolves.
Right.
So I would say it's probably more of a general thing.
Yeah.
Going back, especially for lack of a better word, the group dances, like country dances and things like that. They come out of folk traditions that have been modified over time with different cool movements. And they have their set components that they just kind of they'll kind of take over here, put in a bucket, shake it up, and then throw it out. And then we're gonna go, okay, so then we do this part. We do this. Then we do that, and that's this dance.
Right.
And dancing, especially in early America, 1700s, 1800s, was really it's a social activity, it's a courting activity, and it's a way for communities to come together and basically, especially for the younger folks, openly flirt.
Yeah.
Right? You get to actually touch a woman in public when you do, the palm to palm stuff and the what we call the do-si-dos and things like that. So, and they're fun. If you've never done them, they're actually a lot of fun.
Yes.
You will work up a sweat.
You will.
When you do them properly in a historic house with no air conditioning.
Oh yeah.
And wool clothes.
Oh.
It's awesome.
It is.
And of course, when we have our on-site family days, dance is often a big part of that. So I'm sure we've also got some live streams, of course, that we've done a Victorian dance lesson as part of our members live stream before. And Kat Nagar, who has been an interpreter with us, she's from Atlanta Historic Dance. She's been a guest with us many times and has taught a lot of great dances as well. Josh has quite a specific question. What would have happened if the Byzantines won the Battle of Manzikert in 1071? Would they have survived into modern day? I'm going to definitely need some context for this one.
I don't know that part.
How can you not know about the Battle of Manzikert?
I don't know the Battle of Manzikert.
These
Sorry.
people, Josh. I swear. So there's the Byzantine Empire, which technically is the Eastern Roman Empire. They thought of themselves as the Roman Empire, right? And they did think of themselves as the succession of the Roman Empire until they fell in 1451. But back up 400 or so years, they're under pressure from new forces in Asia Minor and, from the Mediterranean and areas like that. Mostly the forces of Islam are sort of pushing in and trying to push them out of Anatolia. And at Manzikert, basically the imperial army is defeated, and it allows those forces to basically take over Anatolia and brings them, pretty close up to Constantinople itself. So if they had won at Manzikert, if they had only used more more Normans, like they should have done, if they had used more Normans at Manzikert, then I think they would have been able to push that boundary out, and they would have been much, much stronger later on. Now, in the grand scheme of things, they were basically too big, right? Eastern Empire / Byzantium was just too big at that time for them to cover all of their bases. And remember, this is about the time when the Western Christendom is about to start on their crusade. So now they're getting squished from both sides. They're getting squished from, the Islamic forces in Anatolia and the Eastern Mediterranean, places like that. And now, from people that should be their allies, they're starting to get a lot of pressure of armies coming in from the West, from Italy and France and Germany and places like that. And so all these things start to come together, and I just don't think they would have. I think it's a miracle they lasted as long as they did, right? I mean, seriously, it's a weird thing, but they can trace their existence from ancient Rome, when it was made into the Eastern Empire by Justinian, all the way to 1451. They're the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
That is pretty cool.
Right? And yet, they just couldn't hold it together, because by that point, Byzantium was this much around Constantinople, and it was everything they could do to hold on to it for generations. So Manzikert was one of those battles that is a turning point in history that a lot of Westerners don't think about. But Josh, you're right. It's an important one.
Yeah. That's fascinating too. So I feel like every question is just going to lead to new live stream topics. So it's doing our work for us. Thank you, Josh. Sweet Geek on Twitch asks, who were the Dixiecrats? I feel like I've come across that term, but I'm not sure. Dixiecrats.
Political party.
Well, they never formally became a party. They were sort of a subset within the Democratic Party, weren't they? They call themselves the Dixiecrats.
The States' Rights Democratic Party was a short-lived segregationist political party in the United States, active primarily in the South, arose due to Southern regional split in opposition to the Democratic Party around 1948. Okay.
Yeah, basically, as the Democratic Party, under FDR and folks, had become more and more progressive, Roosevelt writes executive orders during World War II that basically starts to desegregate a lot of things that the federal government is involved with. And of course, after his death, Truman, in a crazy sense of folly, decides to desegregate the military too. Oh no. Well, we can't have that. So in opposition to that, there's this significant part of the Democratic Party that splits off, and their platform is almost entirely based on maintaining white supremacy and racial segregation at all levels of society, right? I mean, they're antebellum Democrats is what they are.
Yeah.
Unabashed.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're so radical that they sort of go away after a while.
Well, and also the other Democrats don't want them.
Well, exactly. Yeah, they're trying to split the party and pull as many Democrats as they can, but the Democrats are like, you're a little too much. Thank you.
Yeah, right. I mean, since this was a relatively short-lived political party, it makes me wonder, is it often in our country's history that there are smaller subsets of political parties that have their time and then, wane in and out of existence, or has it basically just been like two really big parties? And
I'm so glad you asked, Libba.
Well,
how much time do we have left?
We got 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. American political history has generally revolved around a two political party system. Now, those parties have changed back and forth over time. In the very beginning, it was the Federalist versus the Anti-Federalist, or later the Republicans.
Jeffersonian Republicans.
And then you start getting Whigs, and then you start getting the Democratic Party under Jackson, and then you get the Republicans that are a new party under Lincoln. Then you get, Dixiecrat, later on Dixiecrats and things like that. And
the know-nothings, those are some interesting.
Yeah, the new Whig party. And, the Bull Moose Party. But it's not to, I don't want to end on modern politics, but one of the interesting things is that in American political history, there tends to be, for lack of a better word, a political party realignment every 50 years. Where, like you say, Libba, a part of it will split off, and they're so moderate that another part of it will split off of the other party and sort of form this other party, and then to make that party reabsorb into another party, they have to moderate or change their platforms. So you've got this blending that happens with it amongst and between the political parties every 50 or so years. Part of the problem, I think, with what's going on nationally with our political scene right now is that the party system has become so entrenched and powerful that there hasn't been a party realignment for about 80 years. Really, not really. Since about World War I or little shorter than that, we haven't had that rearrangement of segments within larger political parties. So I think it's hardened things to the point that something has to give because for lack of a better word, natural process of realignment has not taken place.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I know you don't want to end on that question, so I'm going to go to now. We do have Olivia has one more question, and we'll be able to take Olivia's question. Josh, I see your question, and I'm going to put it in the queue for next week for you. So Olivia asks, we'll end on this one. If you could witness an event from history and survive, and later give a first-hand account, where and what would you see?
Battle of Hastings, 1066. Marie?
Always.
Ooh. I feel like I need to do one where we don't have great first-hand accounts. We only have second-hand accounts or third-hand accounts.
I would love to.
You could pick the moon landing and just hold your breath.
Yeah, right. Glen was hosting a Shakespearean webcast, and that made me think, how cool would it be to actually see, a real Shakespeare play at the Globe Theater?
Actual Hamlet.
Yeah.
1603 or something like that.
Yes, that'd be so cool.
Going back to our folk dance question. I want to go and witness, one of the court pageantry dances at the Palace of Versailles.
Louis XIV,
so cool.
15th.
Yeah. 14th. Okay. Sun King.
The fanciest one?
Yes.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Now, would you want to participate
I
in
would
the ball?
love to participate.
Yes.
Please let me dance. I want to dance.
And you have all your time machine vaccinations and everything, so it'll be perfectly fine. Awesome. Well, thank you, Olivia. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We will be back next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And so keep in mind, any history questions you got for us, keep those in mind for next week. Josh, we'll get to yours right away next week. And Clavion says, I would go to the 13th century and check out the real plague doctors.
All right.
Yes, that would also be pretty fascinating.
Do we have a vaccine against plague?
We have a pretend history time machine vaccine, so he'll be fine.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. We're good. All right, y'all. We hope to see you tomorrow is our next live stream. Marie's going to be hosting a live stream about what happened to the Titanic. Now, you may think you already know this story, but there's going to be lots of details that Marie will reveal to you. So do join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Facebook. And until then, take care. We'll see you later. Bye.